Welcome back. This is the session, the second breakout on closing the digital divide and asking the question, how can we diversify the tech talent pipeline? These are people who are in a variety of different roles, and we're delighted that the person who's leading this session is somebody who has a long history in Silicon Valley, but also in government, was one of the members of the Obama administration, and also has a goal to truly diversify, especially Silicon Valley, but everything within tech. So please join me in introducing Eric Kelly and his incredible panel. So we look forward to this session. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Carol. And I'm looking forward to this exciting session. Again, my name is Eric Kelly. I'm Chairman and CEO of a company called Bridge to Technologies, which is designed to work with corporations to bridge the digital divide for diverse companies, diverse talent. I also have two other technology companies that keep me busy as well. And as you mentioned, I spent 7 years on the Obama administration on his presidential advisory staff for advanced manufacturing, science, and technology, and as the sub-vice chair for Penny Pritzker, who's the Department of Secretary of Commerce. So with the distinguished staff, what we have here, I'm going to go over to Kristina to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kristina Newton. I am a proud alumna of Prairie View A&M University. I am also a recovering computer engineer, and I am the proud founder and executive director of HYPE. And we are empowering young middle and high school girls of color to thrive as future leaders in technology.
Thank you, Kristina. So Richard, as the CEO and president of Inspiredu, please share with us what your organization does.
So my organization, we work to bridge the digital divide. We provide technology, equitable access to technology and training to those who need it within the underserved community. We've seen how important it is. It is something that we are very passionate about now to see how we can do this work and being able to address the needs so that virtual learning is not a barrier. It is actually something we can adopt and continue to evolve our community with.
Jaycee, so you have two important roles, right? One is obviously as a professor at Spelman College and also as the co-founder of CODEHOUSE.
Yes, and I'll also add daughter and sister on there as well.
There you go.
Hello all, my name is Jaycee Holmes. I'm a proud alumna of Spelman College, where I am now a faculty member in the Department of Art and Visual Culture. I'm creating a new major that intersects innovation, technology, and the arts. It's called Interactive Media. I'm also co-director of the Spelman Innovation Lab, our on-campus makerspace and creative resource for any student that has an idea and wants to make it a reality. And as was just previously said, I am a co-founder at CODEHOUSE, a 501c3 nonprofit that prepares students of color for the technology industry.
Thank you. So Bryan, you wear a couple of hats as well, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? I know you're an expert in computer science and also you're with the Georgia DOE.
Yes, so my name is Bryan Cox. I am the computer science program specialist at the Georgia Department of Education, where our goal is to develop a K-12 computer science discipline for all students. What we want to do is make sure that the teachers are supported, but that all students have not only the opportunity, but have experiences and exposure to computer science education.
Well, let's get this started. I had an opportunity to spend some time with them earlier, but one of the things that came out on the earlier session was, we're in a global world. So global intellect and inclusiveness is critical to the success of all of us. So my first question, and Kristina, I'll start with you. In your role as academia and business leader, how are you working on closing the digital divide?
We focus on the quality of use gap that exists currently in the digital divide. When we look at the divide in general, we see that there is a gap in access, so students not having access to technology and the devices and the things that they need to even compete. There's also a gap in digital literacy, just basic usage of the internet, basic usage of computers and technology and things of that nature. But then there's also your quality of usage gap, which a lot of the girls that we support in HYPE, they kind of exist on the lower end of that gap, where they are versed in digital literacy. They know how to browse the web, they know how to use their mobile phones, but they don't understand what is required, or they don't understand the skills needed to become more than just consumers of technology, but creators of that technology. And so, 52% of women are subject to being on the lower end of the digital divide, and this is around the world. And we work at HYPE, we are working to, of course, address this issue with the group of people who are suffering most, your BIPOC, underrepresented girls. And we provide computer science education starting at the 6th grade level so that girls can learn how to code in a community that represents them, that is safe, where they can also use their creativity, as well as their desire to do good in the world while they're learning how to code. We also have a leadership academy for students to develop their leadership skills, for them to understand that they can teach, that they can train, that they can retain the things that they've learned by giving back and supporting others. And by doing this, we are, creating a world where our young girls are growing to become young women, again, who are more than just consumers. They're becoming creators, and they're becoming change agents who are giving back to their community so that this divide becomes smaller and smaller and smaller for future generations.
No, thank you. So Richard, in your role as CEO of Inspire, what are you doing to bridge the digital divide?
So at Inspiredu, what we are doing to bridge the digital divide is, one, find the right programming. We call our programming our Learning Spark Initiative. It's based on the 3 pillars that we've done legacy. We know them like the knobs on the back of our head, which is family learning, STEM pipeline, and adult digital literacy. When you harmonize your programming, you can actually go and listen and address the needs within the community, because they're helping you to survey what you're doing is actually going to help. So that's one piece of it, is making sure that our programming is in the right area, and also pulling the data to support that. The other piece of it is collaborations, like organizations like HYPE, being able to see how we can collaborate with those nonprofits to amplify the impact that we're having. Like I said in the last session, is we're trying to build a NATO coalition in a community arena, because you can't do it all by yourself as one 501c3. You're going to have a collective effort and a collective number of nonprofits to address different issues. You can't be everything to everyone, but you can find partners to try to help complement each other's work so that you can amplify the data that you're going to be pulling so that you can provide it back. And on the backside of it is supporting what you're doing, maintaining that consistency. That's how you break down barriers, because there's going to be a crisis or an issue that's going to come up one way or another. We've seen it in all of our spaces right now. Look at some of the things that we thought we put to sleep that has come back up, but we got to maintain that consistency to keep it down. So in order to continue to bridge the digital divide and address the issues, we're going to have to be able to support what we're doing and maintain that effort, and not get tired, not get complacent, but be vigilant so that we can know that we're making strides and we can pull our generation into this evolution that we're taking. And this transformation is not just because of the pandemic. This is the way of life. We're hitting our next steps. So this is what Inspiredu is doing, and what we're going to continue to do.
No, thank you. So Jaycee, so I know you're pretty busy. You're doing both sides. So what are you, in your roles, in your multiple roles, what are you doing to assist in bridging the digital divide?
Of course. So I'm going to break this down into 3 pillars. We're going to talk about exposure, support, and community. Those are the 3 pillars where I see the digital divide needing the most help. So let's talk about exposure. At both Spelman and CODEHOUSE, we work with pre-college and college-age students. And so when we talk about exposure, yes, exposing students to computer science is incredibly important. I actually teach a class at Spelman called Creative Coding. It is a CS requirement for all students in the Division of the Arts, where they have to learn intro to computer science. So we're talking foundational concepts, functions, loops, conditional statements, all of that good stuff. And the first thing that I do on the first day of class is I ask my students, how confident are you in math, in STEM, in computer science? Give me a number between 0 to 10, 10 being the most confident. I'll get zeros, I'll get negative numbers. I got a negative infinity one time. And it just shows that there is not a sense of confidence for these students in computer science. They do not believe that computer science is accessible to them, right? So that's the first step of exposure, showing students that they belong in the technology industry. And we also do that at the CODEHOUSE level. We have something called the Tech Exposure Days. And that's a day-long event where we invite high school students, some middle school students. Our last one was across the country. We had about 2,500 students. We're about to gear up for one in early spring. We have a tentative date with Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So 3,000 high school students in Georgia are gonna come and learn about our Tech Exposure Days. But essentially, we want to expose students to all the wonderful things that are happening in the tech industry and to expose them to the sense of belonging, to show them that they belong in tech. Okay, now let's talk about support, right? So once a student knows that they belong in tech, how do we support them? Well, there's two areas that we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on financial support, and then we're going to focus on actual academic support and preparation for the industry. Right. So with financial support, CODEHOUSE in the last 2 years has given out $1.4 million in scholarships to 72 amazing HBCU students that are trying to get into the technology industry. Right. And when it comes to the actual foundational support, that academic support, we have a summer bridge program where we invite students to come and learn that foundation in technology, right? Learn that intro to computer science concepts that they're going to need. But then we also prepare them with professional development skills, because it's one thing to know computer science, it's a whole other thing to exist in the tech industry, right? So we want to make sure that they have that professional development skills, that they know what their resume should look like, they know what networking looks like, they know how to talk to managers, they know how to pass and ace the technical interview, right? We want to prepare them with all of that. And that's also what we're doing at Spelman, but at Spelman, we're doing it with a twist. So in the Innovation Lab, we have students of all disciplines and all majors that come in to learn about tech-related concepts. But what we focus on in the Innovation Lab is what I call tech entrepreneurship, right? We show students the prototyping skills, the ideation skills that they're going to need to come up with an idea and make it real, whether that's a mixed reality experience or a video game that they want to create or an app that they want to develop, right? We're there to show them what it means to be a tech entrepreneur or to be an innovator or prototyper in the tech space. So that's what we're doing at the Spelman Innovation Lab, and that's what we're doing in support. And then you have community. Community is so incredibly important, right? We do not want our students going off into the tech industry that is so woefully underrepresented and feeling isolated. We don't want that what's called imposter syndrome to kick in. So we want to make sure that they know that they have a whole network of people, peers that look like them, faculty that look like them, but also industry representatives that have been in their shoes and are now where they're going, to show them the way and to show them that they belong in the tech industry. So our community is so incredibly important. That's a little bit about what we're doing.
That's fantastic. And just to make a comment, because the network and the community is so important in Silicon Valley. Because if you think about the numbers today, it's less than, say it's roughly 2% Black in Silicon Valley. And when you get to the leadership role, it's less than 1%. You get to the board level, I mean, it's a rounding error. So you're gonna have that feeling when you get there that you're the only one, okay? And where's the network? And so making sure you stay connected to the university, make sure that you reach out to folks that really want to build a network and mentor and sponsor. And I always say a mentor and a sponsor is something a little bit different. A mentor gets you ready. The sponsor is one that puts his badge right next to yours and says, I'm sponsoring this person and they are going to get that promotion. They are going to get that job. And so make sure when you find mentors, turn them into sponsors, okay? And that's gonna be so important. And your sponsors can be here at the university. Your sponsors could be in the industry. It can be anyone, someone who's retired from the industry. So really make sure you build that network. But Bryan, I want you to please answer that question as well. You know, what role are you doing? Are using to what are you doing to close the digital divide?
So from the Department of Education standpoint, we have two perspectives. One, the first step is access. We make sure all students have access to computer science education. There's been a recent legislation in 2019 that requires all middle schools and high schools to offer computer science in their school. And this is the first year that middle school was required to do it. And then in 2 years, all high schools were required to offer computer science. So that means that no matter where you are in the state of Georgia, you will have access to computer science education at the middle school and high school level. So that's access. But we want to go a step beyond that. There's a report that goes out every year on the state of CS in education. And it stated last year that at the high school level, 80% of the students that go to school in Georgia had access to computer science, but less than 4% were actually taking those courses, right? So access is step number one, but step number two is participation. You want to make sure that the students are engaging in computer science education. A lot of times, prior to working at the DOE, I was a computer science teacher in high school, and it's an elective, which means you get to choose whether or not you get into that class or not. And often before they get to that level, students are already self-selecting out of computer science because they haven't built a computing identity. They have not built a digital identity early. Somebody told them that girls aren't in computer science, or that that whatever their demographic is, it's not found in the computer science industry, and that we don't expect you to go into tech, and they've been encouraged to do other things. So what we're going to do is help them build identity earlier than high school. So we recently established a new set of K-8 standards for computer science. So now we have CS courses that exist at the elementary level and at the middle school level. And you'll find that in those courses, since those aren't necessarily elective, students get put into them, that they look more like their community, right? All the girls are in there, all the boys are in there, all the students of color, all the students with disabilities. It doesn't matter whether they're in a rural district or in a low socioeconomic district, all the students participate. And the goal is that since we're starting earlier and helping to build that identity at a very young age, that more will be engaged or likely to elect to participate in computer science at the high school level and at the undergrad level, so that we can see less of those negative numbers that Jaycee is seeing in her class.
I mean, and we've talked about this, identity is so important. And I'll just share a couple of data points with you because timing is everything. There's Korn Ferry is one of the largest recruiting firms in the world. They have Korn Ferry Institute. They came out with a study that said in 2030, there will be roughly an $8 trillion of lost revenue because the industries can't find talent. And it says about 85 million workforce shortage. That doesn't mean the talent's not there. It just means they're not looking in the right place. But in my 30 plus years in technology, you kind of find inflection points. This is an amazing inflection point for diversity, because whether they adopt it or not, one thing they understand is the impact to their bottom line. And just in the US, it's going to have an impact of about $2 trillion. So, they need to find the best and brightest talent, which is here. And you just need to make sure you let them know they're there, that you're here. So I'm going to, go back to, Bryan, I'm going to go back to you. Can you tell us what you think the greatest obstacles are for us to be able to achieve, this reality of bridging the digital and diversity divide?
Sure. Although I think those numbers you're quoting might be a little low. In Georgia alone, we have 20,000 open computing jobs, and the average salaries are $90,000 and up. Right. So there's $1 trillion issue just in Georgia. So I assume that it's much larger nationally. But
well, you bring that up because, I think COVID accelerated it.
It did.
And so I think those numbers came out right before COVID. So I think you're absolutely right, which means it's even better for everybody out there.
Better for anybody that's involved in tech at this point.
Exactly.
Right. I think one of the biggest challenges, and we're going to go back to this conversation of identity, is that a lot of times people build their identity based on the community around them. So it's not just a matter of the students in the school having access to computer science, but their parents understanding that tech is an option for all students, not just the brightest students, not those that are AP students or things like that, that it's an option for every student in the school. And and the majority of the parents, the majority of the teachers that are in the world today did not take a computer science class in high school, right? It didn't happen. So their identity is they still think about computer science as that hard class over there that is for the upper echelon students. And that's not where it is right now. Everybody needs to have a basic digital literacy. Everybody needs to have a basic digital citizenship. Everybody can use computing solutions to solve problems in their local communities and in the world, right? So it's not just the CS for all students, it's CS for all, for everyone. Everybody needs to understand what computer science is, what the digital divide is, and why it's a challenge and a problem for our communities, and how our students are primed to be able to address those issues. So it goes beyond just the classroom. It includes parents, counselors, grandparents, everyone.
You need a village, right?
The village.
CJ, same question for you. What's the biggest obstacles?
Okay. CJ is my brother. No, I'm kidding.
Jaycee.
So no, that's okay. What's the biggest obstacle? Oh, there's so many, but I will start with the most pressing one, which is the future costs money. The future costs money. And if you want to invest in the next generation of tech leaders, you better be ready to invest in the communities that they come from. And I'm talking real investments. Dr. Thomas, President Thomas was here earlier talking about celebrating a one-time $250,000 check and pretending it was $25 million. That's not going to cut it anymore. You're seeing what kind of value, the next generation of computer science employees are going to have on the industry. We need serious investment to get them ready, right? And we're talking tons of different types of financial investments, but I'll start with the most impressing one, which is making sure that you're investing in the teachers and the educators that are going to be in the room with the students on a day-to-day basis, right? I talk about two types of investments. There's the flashy investments, and then there are the real strategic, long-term, long-haul investments that are really there for systemic change, right? Flashy investments, flying a bunch of students out to a conference, or that one-time check that's going to make a difference for the next 3 months, right? But then you have the real strategic investments that a lot of companies don't necessarily want to deal with, right? No one wants to talk about faculty endowments, right? But I will say at the collegiate level, we need more faculty on the ground, day to day, enriching these students, working with these students, educating these students, right? We need infrastructure support, right? Some classrooms, right, at the K through 12 and sometimes at the collegiate level, they need help. They need to be renovated. They need new technology, right? So we need some serious investment into the communities, into the classrooms of these students, right? And I know we talk about the bottom line when it comes to these companies and how, these long-term investments, they might not see an immediate ROI. But I always tell companies, if they're coming in the room to talk about, how can you support my students? If you're coming into the room and you immediately want to talk about hiring practices, or you want to talk about immediate return on your own investment, if you want to talk about branding and where you're going to put your logo on whatever you're doing, you're having the wrong conversation, right? Your ROI is the community's ROI, right? When you invest in the community, you are doing so much good. You are lifting up so many people, right? And you have to be prepared for your investment to not always come directly back to you, right? Which brings me to the next step, right? You need to have a real commitment to the community you're trying to enrich, right? And what does that commitment look like? Well, it means that you are committed to bettering the community, not bettering your company, right? You might invest into a student that doesn't ultimately work at your company, and you have to be okay with that. You might invest in a student that goes to work with your competitor, and you have to be okay with that. You might invest in a student that becomes an entrepreneur that you might want to buy out in 10, 15 years, and I'm sure by then you will be okay with that, right? And then let's say that student does go work for your company, right? We don't want just entry-level positions. We're not here to be the bottom of the barrel at those companies. We are not educating this next generation of diverse tech leaders so they can sit at your entry-level positions. You need to be ready to promote them, to mentor them, to become leaders at your own company. They have to be able to sit at the table with you and make decisions that impact you. So that's the kind of commitment that I'm looking for.
I like it. So Richard.
So I'm going to go and, Jaycee said it very well. So definitely an investment. And I'm going to go back to what Kristina brought it up at the last session is, patience in seeing things blossom. I've seen a lack of patience when it comes to these sort of things. And you provide a family with technology and training, and then you get the next week, they want to know, what are they doing? What are they, where are they at and stuff? I'm like, they just got it, I mean, this ain't a political poll. Them things are all over the place right now. Give it some time to mature. It's got to mature just like an investment would if you're in a bank. You're not going to call Wells Fargo tomorrow. They're going to be like, you just gave us the money. We ain't done nothing with it yet. That takes time. You're going to have to do that whenever you're trying to, find that sort of talent in being able to nurture it along in the obstacle that I see a lot that I kind of talk to different folks with is there's no patience. and patience is a virtue. And you've got to be patient in order to see education blossom. I see all of these wonderful young faces who are in the room, and everyone has an idea that they're nurturing so that it can be a beacon to this society. But it takes time. It's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to take time to get that planted. And that's what I always encourage whenever I'm in front of these companies. I encourage you to show the grace and have some patience for things to play out, because in the long run, you will find that pipeline that you're looking for. And that's what we have to do.
No, I totally agree. And I think we have to get to the right level in those organizations. Get to the CEOs, get to the CFOs that are making those long-term investments, because they're doing it. They just need to figure out the best return on their investment is doing it with us. And the numbers are already proven. If you have a diverse leadership team, the ROI is better. Okay, the culture is better. And so I think it's figuring out, how do we get in front of them to get that message? Because they always say they can't find us. And so we got to solve that answer, or that question, once and for all. And so,
Can I address that really quick?
oh, please go ahead, because I wasn't going to leave you out.
Yeah, so I wanted to address that they always say that they can't find us. And I think it's also one of the challenges to closing the digital divide. And that is not investing. I think there's a lack of awareness. I think there's a lack of awareness of what exists even amongst organizations and communities and families. And there's a lack of awareness from the corporate side of things as well. And as a nonprofit organization, oftentimes when we get funding, it's for programming only, but there's not like funding for marketing. There's not funding for capacity building. There's not funding for those things that would create an awareness of what exists, so that more and more people can collaborate with one another, so that more students are served, so that the pipeline becomes larger, and so that companies can no longer use that excuse that we can't find them. They are in your face, because we're putting them in your face, because we have the ability to do that. So I think that the lack of awareness is one of the challenges that exists, as well as, to Richard's point, our instant gratification culture. And so, I shared this before. One of the things that we love to share with our girls is that we are teaching you how to code. Yes, we're going to start at 6th grade. Currently, we're starting at 6th grade. We're looking to, expand to begin in 3rd grade in the next few years. But we're teaching you how to code, and you might not pick it up in the first day. And in the first week or two, you might even think, this is hard. I can't do it. I'm not smart enough. I don't like math. I don't see anybody else who does this. I'm not going to need this in my future. But what we tell them is, give it some time, give it follow through, have patience, commitment, be consistent, because we're going to do the same thing. And what you'll find is that this is just one of the difficult things that you can do, because you can do difficult things. You've already proven it in many other areas of your life. Many of our girls have overcome very hard things, things that I probably would think that I would never have been able to overcome. So learning how to code is, it should be, it's not simple, but it should be simple, because it's another difficult thing that you can do with time, with commitment, with patience, and with consistency. And so that message of, this is not an instant gratification. You're not going to see the return on your investment right away, but rather, you have the skills and the aptitude to do difficult things. That's going to carry on forever, regardless of if they go into the tech workforce or not. They're going to know that they can accomplish difficult things, that they can lead, and that they can be change agents.
Kristina, that's so important. I mean, Richard said the same thing. Patience. Let's look at strategic moves versus tactical, not the instant gratification. I mean, just think about what's happening in the tech industry. There's $150 billion being spent every year by venture capitalists. 90% of them are spent on white males from 10 universities. 95% of those companies are not even profitable. Now, when we go to raise capital or to go to them, they have a totally different playbook in terms of what you have to do to get the dollars. So I think, but we actually, when they give us the dollars, they have a much better return. So we have to figure out how to get that message out to them so that the best investment is with us. So I'm going to go to the next question, because you kind of guided me to it in terms of, so how do we leverage technology to make sure we close that divide? Kristina, I'll go back to you.
Yeah, so I mean, we can use technology currently in our current workforce, leverage technology by making our current workplaces, places where people who are diverse, people who are underrepresented, making it places where they feel safe, where they feel included, where they feel a sense of belonging. And one way that we can do that, whether or not you have, representation at the higher levels within your organization, guess what? I know that you know someone who is represented, and maybe it's a different organization. We can use tech, and they can live across the country, they can live across the globe, but we can use technology to connect your current workforce to mentors, to sponsors, to people who look like them that can help to guide them as they are, kind of finding their footing and finding their way in their entry level and earlier level years in technology. I talk about how, I'm a recovering computer engineer, and it's because I spent 7 years in the tech workforce. And I graduated from an HBCU where my professors told me that I could do anything. They allowed me to try new things. They allowed me to make mistakes. They allowed me to innovate. I was the first person at my college to graduate with a computer engineering degree because I said that's what I wanted. The degree didn't exist, but they allowed me to help create it and take courses by myself. And then when I went into corporate America, the message, became, you're too idealistic. I was taught to be idealistic, the years before, but now I'm too idealistic. I'm asking for too much. I'm speaking up too much. I should sit back, just sit back, do my job. And that's what's going to help me to remain in this workforce and to remain within this organization. And I didn't have other women. I didn't have other women of color. I didn't have anyone to talk to about what was going on. And so I felt like I didn't belong in that space, and it caused me to leave prematurely. And we see this a lot. And so what I would love to kind of see is us leveraging our resources and leveraging technology to make sure that women like me do have access to people and individuals that can help them to stay where they are and to matriculate higher within an organization that they earned, well-earned, hard-earned career.
That is so important. I'm going to come back to you, Richard, but I just want to make a comment because I mentioned it earlier. My chief operating officer, Tina Brown, she gave me the privilege to mention her at this session, but she didn't have the connections in Silicon Valley. Now, let me tell you a little bit about her. She worked for Texas Instruments for a number of years in middle management. She was a consultant for Deloitte, and she came to Silicon Valley. She made the top 3 every single time, but didn't get the job. Now, when I saw her resume, I hired her sight unseen. So let me tell you about her. She has an engineering degree, electrical engineering from Stanford. She has a Master of Engineering right here from Georgia Tech. Actually, her mentor or professor was Gary May. She then went on and got an MBA from Harvard. Smartest person in the room. She didn't have a mentor and specifically a sponsor. So when she started with us, she was pretty shy. She'd always come in my office and tell me after the meetings, this is what is good and this is what is bad. And I would say, well, Tina, why don't you bring it up in the meetings? Because she didn't have that mentor through her career. She wanted to make sure she played it safe. Now she's my chief operating officer, and I can't get a word in edgewise in my staff meetings. But so just having that mentor, having somebody who has your back, having that network so you actually can shine. So, but Richard, I want to go back to you for that question. How can we leverage technology to help bridge that divide?
Data. Bryan knows this very well, especially here in Georgia. You need to have data to support what you're championing and target that data. That data is going to help you to validate a lot of the things that probably going to be hit with some of these companies. They're going to want to know what your data is, what's some of the financial health of it, and those type of points helps to get through a lot of the barriers that's going to be right there at the beginning. So putting that data out there. The other piece of it is follow the examples of what these social media folks, anybody that has over 100 million followers, they talk about that. That's a data point, and that gets advertiser. So what you got to do here in this space is making sure that you're analyzing your data, using it as a sword as you're going through the door, because that's what's going to be so important. And the other piece of it is that, again, I go back to the consistency of bringing other organizations to the table, because sometimes you may not be able to get that sort of conversation, but if you partner with another organization that's doing good work, they can come in and help complement you so that you can have those conversations. been in so many situations where it's been like that. And I think that that will help us to leverage the technology better to go in and be able to start something with these funders, with these folks who have these resources. So I would say that is the way you can kind of use the technology in your area.
So Jaycee, I know you have some interesting insight on this.
I do. So we're talking about leveraging technology. How can we leverage technology? But my real question is, who needs to leverage who here? Anetha and Blanca, is that you two in the back right there? They are. Stand up. These are two of my students, right? Blanca took my creative coding class. She was an international studies major. She graduated May 2022 from Spelman College, but she took my creative coding class in her last semester, had never coded before. A week later, after she'd taken my class, she comes in and shows me a virtual reality platform that she had built from scratch to promote a book that she authored, right? So she has a whole VR world accompanying her book, Who Has Hair Like Mine, right? Anetha Evans took my coding class. She's an art major, graduating May 2023, and started to develop an entire video game in Unity. And she won first place at Research Day last year at Spelman College, right? Their imagination goes beyond anything I have ever seen before. Y'all can sit back down. You didn't know I was going to put you on the spot, but their imagination goes beyond anything I have ever seen before, right? The next generation knows how to leverage technology. They know what they're doing, right? Yesterday, Anetha was showing me how to use a screen record function on a computer in order to grab sound bites to put in her video game, right? They know what they're doing. But what I talk to people about is technology is a tool. And what happens when a tool breaks? You get another one, right? So if Google falls tomorrow, we will still have Bing, right? If Twitter falls today, we have other social media applications, right? So what we really need to think about is, how is technology going to leverage us? Because what I will say about the BAC community is our innovation knows no bounds. Our creativity, we have been making a way for years when there was no way, for centuries when there was no way, right? So it's really about, how is technology going to listen to us and leverage us and our ideas while paying us in order to innovate and create the next generation of technology. I want to put the microphone in their hands, truly.
I want to see you after this session, because one of the things I wanted to talk about, but I'm gonna get to you, Bryan, in terms of what's the next thing that's coming out, and it's the metaverse. So when you talk about virtual reality, I always say technology changes every 7 years. So if you miss the first wave, 7 years from now, you can still be the leader in the next wave. And so virtual reality is going to be the next wave. We should be taking a leadership position in that. And so I had the opportunity when the UN came in to sit on a panel for the metaverse. And it was the former prime minister from Denmark and the vice president of governance for Meta. And so we talked about, how do we make sure we get it right this time, that the diversity is front and present in the metaverse. So I definitely want to talk to you after we get the session done.
Those are the leaders right there.
That's right. So Bryan, so how can we leverage technology?
Well, number one, I love what Richard was saying in regards to data. It's one of the things that drives a lot of our work is looking at the data points and identifying where is computer science happening and where is it not happening, so we can target specific communities, specific areas. So that's one thing. Another thing, going back to what I was speaking about earlier in regards to identity, is helping the students to see that the people participating in the tech companies are not just one homogenous group. It looks like that. If you Google technology leaders, you're going to see Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. It looks like a homogenous group, but that's not the truth. But our students are walking around, and it's difficult for them to build an identity when they don't see themselves in the space, right? So one thing that we can do is to engage our tech companies to have some of their different folks come in and talk to the students, and they don't have to come to the classroom. There's classrooms all over Georgia. There's a project here at GTRI, Georgia Tech Research Institute, where they beam tech professionals into the classrooms of the students. So one tech professional might show up and talk to 4 or 5 classes at one time and talk to them about their journey, how they got to where they are. And one of the things that they've made sure that they want to do is to ensure that The folks that are beaming into the classroom look like the students that they're talking to. So students will say, oh, there's a woman there. I didn't know that women could be in tech. And so they start to have these realizations and build identity very, very early that they do belong in technology, in the tech space. So that's one, is to help them build identity by having the tech professionals reach back out and talk to the students, engage with the students. We have a lot of folks on the panel talk about becoming mentors and sponsors and things like that. Well, you can do that virtually very easily and COVID has shown us that we can connect virtually very easily. Another one is leveraging teachers beyond what their access is in the classroom. We have a challenge in getting computer science teachers in schools, largely because people that have tech knowledge and skills often go for the higher paying jobs. We've been talking about paying teachers more for decades, so we definitely need to continue to have that conversation. But in the meantime, take some of the teachers that are in the classrooms that are dedicated to students and the students' development and beam them across the rest of the state. So you're gonna have one teacher, instead of being restricted to just teaching the 30 students that you have in your classroom, they can teach 300 students. We've been working with the Technical College System of Georgia and the University System of Georgia to build some of these platforms. They have these e-platforms where they can do dual enrollment classes to large groups of students all over the state. So even if you don't have a cybersecurity classroom at your high school, you can still participate in a cybersecurity pathway virtually with some of these instructors. So
Bryan, you just led me right into my next question. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to have you pick it up, and then we'll come towards me. But if you had Silicon Valley sitting in a room today, and you had their leadership team, the folks you mentioned, Bill Gates, Bezos, Michael Dell, you got to go down the list. Not sure who owns Twitter right now, but what would you want to tell the industry leaders that what you want to see happen?
Believe in the community. It's important to have, as a technology company, your bottom line matters to you, right? The profitability of your particular company. But ultimately, we want to believe in the profitability of our entire society. And if you want your society to grow, then everybody needs to be leveraged. All of the ideas, all of the imagination, all of the creativity, we need to make sure that we're leveraging everybody. So it's not just about your bottom line, it's about everybody in the society. And if you're going to improve the society as a whole, then you need to leverage all the communities, invest in all the communities that exist in your society. So I would want them to really lean into, well, we've talked about short-term ROIs. I would want them to really lean into a long-term ROI, to invest in all the kindergarten students, because eventually that's going to be your pipeline. To invest in all of the middle school girls and middle school boys, because eventually that's going to be your pipeline. And there are things you can do. We can have the flashy investments, or we can have those long-term sustainable investments that ultimately build a society and make us better. So that would be my conversation.
Thank you. So Jaycee, the audience is there, all the leaders in Silicon Valley. What do you want them to do?
Hey, y'all. No. Your KPIs need to match the KPIs of the community you're trying to serve. I love how you said it. Believe in your community, right? If you want to care about diversity, inclusion, and specifically equity, then your KPIs need to include the KPIs and the goals of the communities you're trying to serve. That's it.
Richard.
I would tell them the eyes of the universe is watching you right now. And the thing is that that's not a cliche. It is true, because you're getting old. Tomorrow's going to be a one-day step, but continuing to age. And the question you got to ask yourself, have you done everything that you possibly know you could do to help the community? Because the numbers that you see in the bank account and all those sort of things is not going to matter if we're a failed society. And I think that asking that question internally will be a question that you're going to have to basically wrestle with when you're sitting there and figuring out whether you have done it. And I think bridging the digital divide, hunger, education, all of these things are, even health, all of these things are questions that I think any leader, all of them, have to ask themselves, because in the end, you're going to get the answer that you're looking for. So that will be my question to them. Ask yourself, have you done enough in the technology space to make sure that our community is going to thrive? Because if it's not, you have no one to thank but what you see in the mirror.
So Kristina, I mean, you probably have a unique position because you were on that side and then left and started doing other things. We know the numbers that they want to post are not getting there. I mean, 2% representation from the Black community. You know, the board room still looks the same. So what would you tell them to do different to get it right?
So I think we're all kind of saying the similar thing, and I do think it is the message, and that is to invest earlier in the communities that you say you want to serve, and that in the communities that you say that you want to be a part of your talent pipeline, starting in elementary and middle school, investing earlier, investing often. I believe before us, Kwame Johnson was on the panel, the executive director of Big Brothers and Big Sisters, mentorship. And when we think about investing, our young people, the talent that's entering the pipeline, they are geniuses, right? They are very smart. They can learn quickly. They're picking up skills, faster than we can even keep up with it. And there are organizations like mine, there are nonprofits, we have schools that, are also going to continue to try and teach them these skills that are going to be needed. But what they also need to see and understand is there are the skills of how to communicate via an email, how to dress appropriately in the workforce. How can I, how can I deal with conflict with the manager or with the colleague in a way that is appropriate? And I think these are the investments that are corporate partners and Silicon Valley that they can make, because young people, they recognize a Google, they recognize a Microsoft, they recognize an Amazon, they recognize the names, and they will also respect, your opinion and what you say. And so when you come in to the room, don't just think about, who can I hire, or what skills do you have, or can you pass the technical interview? Begin thinking about the entirety of the individual and the community that we're working to support, because those individuals, again, not only become a part of your workforce in the future, but then they give back. They go back to their communities, they serve, they mentor, they support, and it does become it becomes a pipeline that we're growing, that's getting longer and longer. And so that's what I would ask, any leader, any professional leader, is to, find someone in your community that you can mentor. Yeah, find a school that you can volunteer at. Find a way that you can give back to our young people today so that they can become successful within your organizations tomorrow.
This is interesting. We need to take this show on the road. We need to take it to Silicon Valley. I had the opportunity to sit in a conference at LinkedIn. They had 100 presidents from universities, no HBCUs. And they said, what are the soft skill gaps? They said, what are the soft skill gaps? They told us to LinkedIn that you would like to have us translate to our students. And when I looked at those soft skill gaps, it had nothing to do with what we're talking about today. In terms of, when you go to your first corporate meeting, what do you wear? How do you navigate into that meeting? When you go to your first corporate offsite, and it happens to be at a country club, to make sure you're not uncomfortable in terms of what should I be doing there? What should I wear? And so we need to take this to Silicon Valley. So I know we're running out of time. I have one closing question and I'm going to pick the person that I want. So it says, since this event is resolved to solve, okay, what commitment are you making to make sure we get there? And I'm going to pick Jaycee.
Oh my gosh, what commitment am I making?
You're making the commitment. This is resolved to solve. Okay, what is the commitment you're going to make to close the digital divide?
I'm committing to making a better future for the next generation. I'm committing to give them every opportunity I wish I had had when I started out in big tech. There we go.
That's great. And so I just like to wrap up. One, I'd like to thank all the panelists. This has been an honor and a privilege. And, I have one quote that I always use, from President Obama, that he said, destiny is not defined for you, it's defined by you. So again, the future's ours.
Thank you.
And I think, Eric, what we can say is one of the things that you could think about is, where can we have an event like this in Silicon Valley where we bring our diverse Success Network into that area and encourage them to get offices in Detroit, in New Orleans, in Cleveland, in all these places where the diverse communities are living and thriving. So awesome. But the magic too is you all now get to know each other, and there's going to be incredible connectivity from the relationships that you all have just established. So let's give them one more round of applause and everyone.